on Florida's Gulf Coast. This is Women of Grace Live. Join us today as we discuss issues important to your life and faith. Spiritual insight, compelling discussion, practical wisdom. Women of Grace for such a time as this. Now, here's your host, Johnnette Benkovic.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Women of Grace Live. I am Johnnette Benkovic. What a privilege it is to be with you today. We love spending this time with you Monday through Friday as we discuss issues of importance to your life and to your faith, and as we have holy conversation together. You know what I want to do? I want to start this program off by giving you the numbers by which you can join us live here on Women of Grace Live. Let me give you those numbers. It's 800-585-9396, 1-205-271-2985. Now, I have to tell you, those are the numbers that you use Monday through Friday to reach us here on Women of Grace Live. But today, we're not going to be taking any calls. No, today, we are going to spend this time with you getting into depth on a topic that is very, very important. One that I think, especially at this time of the year, sears our hearts and our minds as we consider the numbers of individuals who have experienced the emotional fallout from this decision that was made in 1973 on January 22nd, as well as the numbers of lives that have been lost as a result of it. And we're going to be talking about abortion. We're going to be talking about the way in which we can heal from abortion. We have a marvelous guest lined up for you today. Before we get into the topic of the day, though, I certainly want to extend an invitation to those of you that are watching us via YouTube to use the chat feature right there on your EWTN radio channel. You can put in your questions there. You can type them in right there. We're going to receive them here. Our Jeff Burson, who is manning this for us today, is going to receive them and send them to the incomparable Elena Rodriguez, our producer. She'll get them out here to me on the computer screen, and we'll take those and we'll have those for our guest today. So please do use that feature. We are eager to hear what you might have to share with us or say to us about it. Also want to extend a personal invitation to you for something else as well. I want you to join us March 19th in 2016, the year that we are currently now in. I would like to invite you to join us at Orchard Lake Schools up there in Orchard Lake, Michigan for a one-day Women of Grace conference. Got to tell you, I am so excited about this upcoming event there. Many of you are aware of the fact that we were there last July, and as I have been sharing with you, you know, the grounds I do believe are anointed grounds. I believe they're holy grounds. So many of our women who came to our retreat expressed that to us. They felt the sense of our Blessed Lady there, as I have, and in addition to that, in a special way, St. John Paul II, who visited there in 1976 and gave us, a message which I believe is prophetic, and we have been seeing lived out since that time, perhaps in a sharper, more crystal clear way in recent years. And that is, he said, we are now facing the final confrontation between the gospel and the anti-gospel, the church and the anti-church. And he said he didn't think that large sections of the American population or American Catholics were aware of this. And he said it was a battle that we all had to face, and it was a battle that we all had to take up, but not to fear, because it was within the providence of God. Those are hopeful words right now as we see so many things happening right in our current history, as well as within the life of the church and within the life of faith that so many are striving to live, and yet so many are falling away from. So nonetheless, we want to invite you to join us for this very special one-day event at Orchard Lake Schools, March the 19th. It is a one-day Women of Grace conference. Father Philip Scott will be with us. Thomas K. Sullivan will be with us. I am going to be there as well. We're all going to be presenting. And the theme is Infinite Mercy, Preparation for the Spiritual Battle. Infinite Mercy, preparation for the spiritual battle. I think two messages, obviously, being in this year of the Jubilee year of mercy that we're experiencing right now. the idea of mercy, the concept of mercy, the reality of God's mercy, so very present in our minds and in our hearts. But in addition to that, the realization that we are up against a mighty battle today. And we're going to be talking about strategies, we're going to be talking about tools, but we're really going to also be talking about those interior battles that we face, God's mercy in facing those, wounds of the heart that need to be healed, sins that need to be expiated through the sacrament of reconciliation if they haven't been brought there, and how to apply the graces of the sacrament of reconciliation if we have taken it to those healing waters but have not been able to find the emotional freedom that we need. It's going to be a very important event, and we're hoping that you'll join us there. All of the information is there for you at womenofgrace.com. That's womenofgrace.com. You are welcome to go out there. Indeed, I think it's number 2 in the slideshow. You click on that. It's a hyperlink. You click on it again. It's going to take you to the landing page, and you're going to be able to do all kinds of wonderful things right there, like register to join us there at Orchard Lake Schools. Now, I promised you that we have a very, very special guest with us, and I'm going to read you just a little portion of her bio. We're going to go to a break, and then we're going to welcome her, and she's going to be with us. We're going to be getting into a deeper discussion about her story, as well as the hope that she provides for so many today through her work, through this beautiful outreach that God's entrusted to her called abortionchangesyou.com. And this is what she writes, and I'm reading it. Those of you watching can see that. She says, "When I became pregnant at 18, I had an abortion. I was completely unprepared for the emotional fallout. I thought the abortion would erase the pregnancy. I thought I could move on with my life. I was wrong. I experienced periods of intense anger followed by periods of profound sadness. When my feelings became too difficult to deal with, I reached out for help from a trained counselor. With counseling and the help of supportive friends, I was able to enter into a healthy grieving process. In addition to grieving the loss of my child, I slowly became aware of how my choice to abort had impacted my family. I was surprised and saddened that my parents, my sister, and even my living children struggled to deal with the loss of a family member through abortion. Over the years, I've heard many heart-rending stories about abortion. Although each story is unique, a common thread moves through them all. Abortion changes you. Yet there is no forum to help abortion participants and the people who are closest to them explore this tragic truth. Although abortion has touched many of us, we rarely share our personal experiences regarding it. This is what led me to write a book that shares some of the stories I've heard. There was also a need for a safe space for people to tell their stories, explore the ways abortion has impacted them, and find resources. We created abortionchangesyou.com to fill this need. It is my hope that this website will assist you as you seek to make sense of your abortion or the abortion of someone close to you. That autobiographical word written by our guest today, Michaelene Friedenberg, the founder and director of abortionchangesyou.com, and also author of the book Abortion Changes You. She's going to be with us. We're going to be talking with her, and I know that you're going to have some questions for her. Those of you watching us via YouTube, I invite you to send those in via the chat feature. We are not accepting phone calls today, and Michaelene is going to be with us when we come back from our break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, friends. Welcome back, friends. You're listening to Women of Grace Live. I am Johnnette Benkovic, very happy to be with you today. I shared with you an autobiographical message from our guest in which she tells us about the emotional fallout that she experienced following her abortion at the age of 18, and she has begun a beautiful outreach for those individuals impacted by abortion, obviously women who have procured an abortion, but not just the women who have procured the abortion. In addition to that, all of those impacted by that decision. That can involve husbands and boyfriends, it can involve parents and siblings, it can involve children who have been born after the fact. Indeed, this particular reality extends far beyond the woman who has had the abortion, and yet this is something that is not discussed in our popular media. It's nothing that we ever hear of when this discussion comes up in political discussions or anything of the sort. It's an important conversation to have, and I'm so happy that Michaelene Friedenberg has accepted our invitation to be with us today as we approach the March for Life on January 22nd and commemorate that bleak day in the history of this nation when abortion became legal on that very same date in 1973. We do well to prepare our hearts and our minds to enter into a type of prayerful relationship with all of those who have suffered as a result of this Supreme Court decision. Michaelene, welcome to Women of Grace Live. It's wonderful to have you with us today. It's great to have you with us, Michaelene.
Yes, thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, thank you so very much, and I'm glad you've accepted our invitation. I do want to let everybody know that the week of Roe v. Wade, that week of January 22nd, you are going to be with us on Women of Grace, our television program, talking about this very topic, and this is really just an appetizer for that, friends, but I think it's a marvelous way for us to begin to prepare for this event. And you know, I shared, as you heard, Michaelene, your autobiographical message regarding this. And you talked about the emotional fallout, and you thought that the abortion would erase the pregnancy and you could move on with your life. But you discovered that that was really a myth. That was not possible to do. Can you share with our listeners today and those that are with us via YouTube exactly how it was that you felt, what began to set in after this decision had been made?
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, certainly as I was making the decision about what to do with the pregnancy, when I did think about abortion did kind of feel like a reset button, like you could start again. You could go back to the way that my life was before. But for myself, and certainly everybody's experience is unique, but for myself, I found as I walked out of the abortion clinic that I knew that was not true. I had a sense that a life was lost, and I began to feel the significance of that. It was painful. It was also confusing because I hadn't really heard anybody talk about it that way before. And there was a lot of fear, too. I didn't know who to share that with, and when I thought of others who I might, I didn't know if they would dismiss what I was going through or maybe judge me for the decision that I had made. And so I kept those feelings inside, but they continued to grow, and that sense of a life being lost and I was responsible for it, and the guilt and the grief and the confusion.
You know, it's an interesting thing that you say there, and everybody's experience of this that's had an abortion is a little different. Generally, it falls into two categories. I think that there are those that come out of that abortion clinic and experience exactly what you did. Others feel a type of momentary relief, the moment of which can be immediate and last for a period of time, but eventually there is this haunting feeling. And when you share that you felt the loss of a life right away, this is the profound reality of the female person, that God has created us to carry within ourselves or to be entrusted with by Him another human person. And at the moment of conception, everything of the woman is given over, and there is some type of an intuitive sense about what is taking place within her. Even though she might not be cognitively aware of it, I really truly believe that on some deep level of her being that involves both the physical reality of who she is as well as the emotional, psychological, most importantly spiritual reality of her, perceives something going on. And the fact that you felt this as soon as you left the abortion clinic, I think really confirms that beautiful intuitive reality of the female person, and how unfortunate that the decision led to such a difficult moment for you, but it's explainable given the way in which we're constructed. How did you begin to cope with those emotions?
Yeah, well, for myself, I did not cope very well at all. I tried different strategies to kind of push that down. Even made a geographical move, thinking that if I moved far away from where the decision had been made, that I could put it behind me. I found that didn't work. Unfortunately, began to numb out my feelings by engaging in an eating disorder, and that in a way, it kind of worked in the sense that I didn't think about the abortion and the loss as much, but then as often those behaviors come, they begin to take control of you, and my life began to spin out of control, and I began to realize that I really needed some help, and that was definitely, I was able to overcome my fears finally when not only was the eating disorder out of control, but I began to think almost daily of hurting myself or even ending my life. It almost seemed like the appropriate response, but there was a part of me that knew that that wasn't true as well. And I reached out for help, and first reached out to a friend who responded exactly the opposite of my fears. She responded with compassion and understanding, and was able to gently help me to find some additional help because I had such an extreme reaction. I needed to have some very specialized help with a group that helped with after-abortion healing in addition to some individual counseling.
Michaelene, were you able to tie together the reality of the abortion and the dysfunctional behavior that you were engaging in and exhibiting?
For me, it was pretty clear that the two were connected. That's not always so. Certainly, we can be, having some unhealthy behavior, and sometimes we don't know where the genesis of that is, or maybe we already had that behavior and it starts to get worse, or it's episodic. Sometimes from men and women who will share with me, it may be around the anniversary date of the abortion or the anniversary of the due date that they begin to either engage in unhealthy behavior, or maybe they have nightmares, or just are kind of haunted by my child would be this age, and there's a period of sadness, and then perhaps that goes away in time, and they're able to resume kind of their normal life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I oftentimes think that people, I'm trying to remember here if it's Plato or Socrates, but one of the two of them said that an unexamined life is not worth living. And I think that we live in such a, busy culture that we don't often think through why am I behaving as I do. We don't take that time for introspection in a healthy way to try to determine what is the genesis of this dysfunction that I'm experiencing. And I think that if more women did, they would find that as the root cause if they've had an abortion, and then could seek the help that's necessary. Now, you mentioned that you had a very good person that you confided in, and you were fearful of what their response would be, and through the grace of God, the response was exactly the opposite, and they were very, very compassionate with you. You pay a lot of attention to this quality, beautiful quality and necessary quality for anyone seeking that kind of a confidence, and that is the capacity to listen with empathy. And you mentioned this on the website abortionchangesyou.com. We're going to be talking about how that's helped so many in just a moment. But I want to share, and you talk about it again in your book, but I want you to share for us, with us a little bit about the necessity of that quality and what it means to empathetically listen. What does that mean? And why is that so essential when somebody is bearing their heart?
It certainly is essential, and it can also be very difficult. I think sometimes listening sounds simple, but it's really not. If somebody is sharing with you great pain, it's sometimes difficult for us to be present and to sit with them in that pain, and yet that's exactly what they need and the gift that we can give them. Sometimes we want to rush in and try to comfort and assure or erase that pain, and we're not able to do that. And yet, in allowing someone to share their pain and their story with us, or perhaps they have conflicted emotions, perhaps they feel still at the same time maybe relief and sadness, and that's confusing for them. But being able to allow them to express that they're making huge strides in starting their healing process. I think it can also be difficult to listen because perhaps we don't agree with what they're telling us, or it's really rubbing a wrong against our values. and yet being able to sit and be present and accept them exactly where they're at, and love them for who they are, it will be so important for them. And it's exactly what they're hoping against hope that maybe somebody would be able to do. They often, not everybody, but often in the midst of the sadness, there's this great fear that we will be rejected and that we will be judged. And to have somebody accept us as we are really begins to then open those doors so that we can begin to heal.
Yeah. I'm struck by the comment that you made there that, the person that's listening oftentimes wants to erase the pain, comfort in such a way that the pain's erased. And you said that they can't do that. The other, I think, sometimes first response to somebody that's listening to a very painful story is to try to want to solve the problem, and you can't do that either. There is something in that healing process that requires that pain being felt, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's often, again, that's so fearful for the person who's in pain, and I think we can probably all relate to it. It doesn't have to be pain that was caused from an abortion experience, but sometimes when there is great pain or great loss, it feels like if we go there, we'll never come out of it again. It will overwhelm us. And yet the only way through is to go through. Mm-hmm. And it will be painful, and that pain may increase, but we will survive it, and especially with the support and the help of others who are around us.
Yeah. If you were to give someone that's with us today, listening to us, some pointers on how to be empathetic to someone who may come and share this story with us, what would those pointers be? And before you answer, Michaelene, I think that it's important to share with us a little bit about the great trust that the person who is confiding in us is placing in us. I mean, they're really presenting, this wounded heart to us, and it's like they're entrusting it into the hands of our soul, basically, so it's a sacred trust that's happening here. So what would be some pointers to be aware of the context and aware of that reality?
Mm-hmm. And I certainly think that there are things that we can do to prepare ourselves for that. Mm-hmm. Because it's so rare that individuals will share their personal experiences around abortion, it puts us at the disadvantage that we have not seen those conversations modeled. We probably haven't participated in them. In a sense, we haven't been able to practice. And so some ways that we could prepare ourselves, on the website, abortionchangesyou.com, there's a portion of the story of the website where people can post their stories. And I think going there and reading through some of those stories can help to prepare us and give us an understanding for how individuals who've experienced abortion are expressing that. That can help us to prepare for what we may hear from somebody else. There's also a portion of the website called Healing Pathways, and you can go through that and look at some of the things that would be helpful for someone who's moving through that healing process. And I think having that knowledge really helps us in many ways. And part of it, even I'd mentioned being present with that person, and certainly if someone's sharing their story, we don't want to be having body language that would be perhaps conveying that we're shocked, that we're horrified. It would come across to them as we're judgmental, but perhaps it's just because we've never heard of this before. So if we can prepare ourselves ahead of time, that can really help us in our demeanor as we're listening and being with that person. And you've also mentioned as well, one of the things, if somebody's sharing with me, I'm trying to be there and to listen, and then when it's appropriate, to make a few comments that would be validating or reassuring to them. So making a simple statement like, I'm so sorry for your loss, repeating some of the things back to them. Maybe they had expressed a lot of fear, or that they felt so alone, and saying, I'm sorry you felt so alone. I wish I could have been there with you. And then also reassuring them of their confidentiality, that you are, I thank individuals for trusting me with their story, and reassure them that I will not be sharing it with anybody else. Mm-hmm. Now, I know when someone chooses you to speak to, they're assuming that you won't, but I think it's so important to verbally tell them and reassure them that you will be keeping that confidential, and then asking them how you can support them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we assume that things that work for us and make us feel better will work for someone else, and perhaps they won't. Yes. And so being able to ask them that, so that we then have more information about how we can support them.
Yes. You know, one of the beautiful aspects of your website, and I want to give that website address again to all of you, it's abortionchangesyou, all one word, .com, abortionchangesyou.com, is that you do create a place for people in that website to share their stories anonymously. And you shared something earlier on there, Michaelene, that I think is important to underscore. You say that sharing that story is really the first beginning step, if you will. It's the first step of the healing process. And to be able to do that, I mean, you know, maybe people are scouring around and mentally looking at those individuals that they know who would be a good person to confide in, and maybe yet they're not ready to take that step, even if they land upon that person. So this provides them with a safe haven and an anonymous opportunity to begin to even become accustomed to letting that part of themselves be known. And so I do want to send you out there, friends, if this situation pertains to you because you've procured an abortion, or if it pertains to you because you have participated in an abortion, or it pertains to you because a loved one has procured an abortion, this is a beautiful place for you to begin to share your story and to begin to get in touch with those emotions and those feelings. It's abortionchangesyou.com. The founder and director of abortionchangesyou.com is with us today, Michaelene Friedenberg, and you hear that music, it means we're going to a hard break. So Michaelene, we're going to be back with you. We're going to be talking more about abortionchangesyou.com and what it means to grieve in a healthy way, something that you mentioned in your autobiographical information that I was able to share with all of you today at the beginning of our program. You are listening to Women of Grace live, and I am Johnnette Benkovic, and we are so happy you're with us today. Do want to encourage you to get out to our website, womenofgrace.com. We're happy to be with you via YouTube today. Our chat feature is open there for you. You can get your questions to us. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Hey, you're still listening. That is very good. Welcome back to Women of Grace. We are not taking live phone calls at this time. Enjoy the show. Check the AP chat for the YouTube chat.
Yes, I see that here. Emily in PEI.
Prince Edward Island. Okay.
Yes, I was there once.
Wonderful.
I spoke there. Anne of Green Gables' little house is there.
Wow.
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. Well, it was. It burned down, but got to see it.
Here we go. Coming back.
Welcome back, friends. You're listening to Women of Grace Live. I am Johnnette Benkovic. Very happy to be with you today. We have a wonderful guest with us, a woman who I met a month or so ago, maybe 2 months ago now at this point in time. Interviewed her for our television program, Women of Grace. That program is going to be airing the week of January 22nd. We certainly do hope that you will watch it. It is about abortion. I really felt a beautiful what do I want to say? A beautiful disposition of heart being expressed by Michaelene, and I know that you're hearing that today as we have this opportunity to interview her over radio. Want to let you know that we are with you live via YouTube. We are accepting your chat comments, and before we go back to Michaelene, Emily from Prince Edward Island in Canada writes in, "Good morning. I ask you and your listeners to please pray for PEI Canada that we may continue to not have abortion in our province as the the government is being pressured hard now. And we will join you in that prayer, Emily, because we don't want for any more women to experience the emotional fallout of that post-abortive reality, nor do we want anyone else to experience the fallout that comes after someone we love is procured an abortion, and we certainly want to save the lives of those babies. And we are extremely happy that we are able to join you in that prayer. Also, my producer tells me that it was Socrates who made the statement, an unexamined life is not worth living. Thank you very much, Elena, for giving us that right person there, and we appreciate that. And here is someone else writing in, prayers for me and my husband as we prepare to welcome our baby Ben in the next 4 weeks. We would appreciate that, so we do pray for you. Oh, that was Emily in Canada. So, well, congratulations to you, Emily, and to your hubby there. You know, Michaelene, as we spoke earlier on there, we were talking about the fact that abortionchangesyou.com offers this safe haven for people to begin to share their stories. That was very important to you, wasn't it, when you began to develop this, or I personally feel that the Holy Spirit was prompting you to develop this whole beautiful outreach for individuals?
Well, one of the things I was so aware of is that although there are so many after-abortion healing helps that are throughout the country, that they tend to be underutilized, sometimes because people don't know about them, but other times because of their fear. It's just too much of, for the first step, it's almost too much to call somebody or to go somewhere in person. And so our thought with myself and the team I worked with is that if we could create a place that was anonymous, and that you could go to any time of the day or night, that perhaps that would be an easier first step for somebody to take. And then when they were ready, they could reach out to a family member or a friend or somebody else for support, or even go search on the website and find local help in their area.
Yeah, it is very, very beautiful, and I want to share with our listeners as well that the book Abortion Changes You is available through EWTN Religious Catalog. So you can go out to EWTNRC.com, friends, or you can call a religious catalog and you can order a copy of that book, and it is written in a very unique style. And one of the things that I appreciate so much about both the website and the book are the personal testimonies that you tell in there. And we mentioned, you know, and I continue to mention throughout the broadcast that Abortion Changes You doesn't just change you. It changes people in your life who know that you've procured the abortion. And this is something that often isn't recognized. I know that there are, Rachel's Vineyard, for example, is very good at saying that the services that are available there, the retreats that are offered and given, are open to all of those who have either participated in helping someone procure an abortion or actually for prior abortion providers, but additionally also for families, for family members, you know, parents whose daughters have had abortions who now have lost a grandchild through abortion, siblings who have lost a niece or a nephew in that way too, as well as friends who are grieving with their friend who has had an abortion. Share with us, if you would, a little bit about that reality and the way in which abortion affects those individuals that are close to the abortion seeker or the abortion, one who procured the abortion's life.
When there is knowledge that an abortion has happened in a family, it's surprising how it impacts the different family members. And of course, again, that's something that's unique. But I will hear from surviving siblings this sense of, you know, what would it have been like to have had another brother or sister, or perhaps they were an only child and they grew up as an only child, but there's this realization that they really weren't an only child, that there should have been another brother or sister. It tends to be one of those things that maybe other family members know about, but it's something you don't talk about. And so that can really create some additional pain and tension within a family where often they have their own personal pain, but they're also worried about maybe the person who had the abortion. They long to talk to them about it, but they don't want to cause them any additional pain. And so everybody continues in that silence where typically when we grieve together as a family and as a community. That's part of the grieving process, but often that does not happen when we've lost a family member to abortion.
Mm-hmm. You talk about this business of grieving in a healthy way. I want to talk about how abortionchangesyou.com and the book begin this process for you. Obviously, one is by telling the story. But what does it mean to grieve in a healthy way?
Well, I think part of that, and in particular with abortion, is actually allowing yourself to grieve, allowing yourself to feel the pain, and having that acknowledge that reality by others. So that's why telling your story is so important. It begins to really solidify, you're able to solidify and get in touch with where you're feeling. And for every person, it's going to be different. Mm-hmm. There's a whole range of emotions. Sometimes with abortion, when it comes to personal experiences, we tend to hear what I call the narrative of extremes. The person who perhaps feels like it was the best decision and maybe even feels they're empowered by their decision, to the person who's devastated, or someone like myself who was finding it very difficult to function in daily life. And yet, although that's certainly true for some individuals, that typically isn't the case for most people. They typically fall somewhere else in between in the continuum, and then that sometimes may change over time or change over years or different seasons of their lives or different times of the year. And I think it's important to know that, because sometimes people feel like, well, maybe my pain isn't as great as this person, so maybe I don't need to deal with this. And yet I would encourage any unresolved grief in this area would be something that would be worth looking at. And when you're ready to share it with somebody who can help to validate and to support you that what you went through was real, and that it's deserving of support. In that process, you'll be exploring your emotions to some extent, and also identifying losses. Sometimes when we think about abortion, sometimes the only loss that comes to mind would be the loss of the child, which is understandable. But for most individuals, there are other losses that have occurred. Some studies say that about 80% of relationships don't survive an abortion. So you may be grieving the loss of the relationship with your partner, with your girlfriend, boyfriend, your husband, wife. That's a very significant loss. If someone was a person of faith, perhaps they're really feeling this loss of relationship with God. That's very significant for them. Or maybe for them, there are some who want to have children later on and then find for whatever reason they're not able to do that. And so suddenly the loss then becomes the loss of being a parent. And so there can be many different losses that occur, and being able to identify those and really grieve each of those losses individually will be important.
Mm-hmm. You know, I get a picture in my mind as you share with that, and you know, I just want to mention that quote again from Socrates, that an unexamined life is not worth living. And sometimes it would be beneficial, I think, especially in these early stages, Michaelene, as you're talking about the other losses, to sit down maybe and make a list of those losses. You know, sometimes there's something about getting it outside of ourselves and getting it on paper where we can look at it that gives us a certain type of objective/subjective perspective of it, so that we can see, well, no wonder I'm experiencing all of this interiorly. This is what I've gone through. I'm going to begin, you know, giving ourselves permission to begin to grieve all of those additional losses that we have there. I think that would be a very useful exercise. Do you think so?
Oh, absolutely. And there's a place on the website. You don't have to do it there, but it gives you that space to actually write that out and to contemplate that and give some examples that you can reflect on and see if those fit your experience. And what you just said, the permission to grieve, giving yourself permission to grieve and having others give you permission to grieve is so important. Mm-hmm. And I think also realizing that the timeline for grieving is going to be very different for each person. For some, it may be shorter. For others, it may be extended. And then there may be seasons of grief.
Yes.
And perhaps there are times where we just don't have the emotional bandwidth to enter deeply into an area, and that's fine. We can wait for the time when we feel that we're ready to have that happen, or we might go through a season of grieving a loss, and then maybe there'll be another season of either grieving a different loss, or perhaps it will strike us a little differently at maybe the 5-year anniversary or the 10-year anniversary. And I think realizing that may happen is really important. Sometimes we think if the feelings come up again that maybe we didn't do it correctly.
Yes.
And then we kind of stop that process. But realizing that grieving is a process, and in some ways, grieving is a lifelong process, although I don't want that to sound scary. It doesn't mean that you're in intense pain that whole time. It just means that sometimes it can come in waves, and that's normal. And we can relax into that and then ask others for support, and knowing that we will move through that wave of grief as well.
Yeah, that's beautifully stated. We're going to go to a break, and when we come back, more with our guest today, friends, Michaelene Friedenberg. She's giving us some excellent advice on grieving, specific to grieving an abortion, but I think that generally speaking, it's excellent advice for any kind of grief that we might be experiencing. We're going to be right back, inviting you to stay with us. This is Women of Grace Live. I am Johnnette Benkovic. Welcome back, friends. You're listening to Women of Grace Live. I am Johnnette Benkovic. So happy to be with our guest today and with all of you. Our guest is Michaelene Friedenberg. She's sharing with us about abortion. She is the founder of abortionchangesyou.com, really encouraging you to get out there and to check out that website. Now, maybe you say, well, that website doesn't pertain to me because I haven't had an abortion. Well, my guess is there's someone that you know, whether you are aware of it or not, who has had an abortion, and you never know when that person is going to come to you to share their story. She can give you all kinds of insightful helps and hints at abortionchangesyou.com. Beautifully constructed website. And the book that she has written, Abortion Changes You, is available for you at EWTNRC.com. Do want to give you a caveat on that book. It is a book that you read, but it's not a book that's dense with a lot of content in that sense. It, however, is a book that you work through. And in working through it, I think you begin to experience a certain type of freedom. For those of you who have not had an abortion and yet may find that there's a family member who has or a friend who has, this book can really give you great insights on how you can be that true friend to them and help them through this process. I want to just state, Michaelene, that before we went to our break there, you were talking about the way in which grieving works, and you were sharing about the fact that sometimes it comes in waves and sometimes it doesn't, and you were saying, and when the wave comes, you know, you just kind of, and the image that I got was surfing. You just kind of allow yourself to be taken by that wave, and it will eventually bring you to a safe shore. And what you experience in the aftermath is that you've grown as a result of that process, that your healing has come to a deeper level, and you are in a better position, better shape in that grieving process than you were prior to riding that wave. That's been the way it's been for me in grieving the loss of my son and my husband, and I think that, you know, it's pretty much the same for any kind of a grief that a person would be experiencing.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. We're headquartered in San Diego, so we often think of different analogies with the ocean. You shared with the wave. We often think of a riptide as well. So a riptide can pull you out away from the shore, out into the ocean, which can be very scary. But the way to survive that is if you fight against it. That's when people can go under. But when you actually allow it to take you out, and at some point it will stop, and then you're able to either come in or someone can help you in. Kind of feel it's the same way. And so often when we fight against something, it not only doesn't help us, but can increase rather than relaxing into it.
You know, and I think that's the time when people begin to get into those dysfunctional behaviors, when they're fighting against the grief, because the emotions well up. They were unexpected, like a riptide is unexpected most of the time, and it begins to pull them in a way that they didn't anticipate and don't feel that they've got the stamina to withstand, and as a result of that, the coping mechanisms come in, and the coping mechanisms are rarely, if ever, useful and helpful. So, you know, as we continue our discussion, we've got about 2 minutes left in the program. I'd love for you to share with us, you know, how it is then that a person begins to experience the capacity to move on with their life as this healing process continues, and how does abortionchangesyou.com and the book really begin to encourage people to move in that direction?
Mm-hmm. At some point, there's an important decision that we will all make, and that's whether or not we're willing to let go of the pain. Mm-hmm. And that's a really difficult decision to make sometimes. Sometimes we want to hang on to that pain for a variety of reasons. Sometimes we feel that if we let go of the pain that we will be forgetting that person or their value is less, when actually it's really just the opposite. But being willing to let go of that pain means that we are now willing to let this become part of our lives and who we are, and be able to move forward. And we find that when we do that, it creates a special empathy and understanding for others, and places us in a position not only where we're feeling peace and wholeness and the ability to move forward, but we're able to help others as well.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the whole point of abortionchangesyou.com. You know, there's the beautiful passage in St. Paul's epistle to the Corinthians. I think it's 1 Corinthians. I keep saying one of these days I'm going to verify that. But he says that, you know, God comforts us in all of our affliction, that we might comfort others with that consolation who are similarly afflicted. And abortionchangesyou.com does that, and so do you, Michaelene Friedenberg. You are a gift, and I'm so grateful that you could be with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
And we do want to send you out to abortionchangesyou.com, friends. Get on out there, check out the website, get the book through EWTN RC, Abortion Changes You. Also, while you're out there, you know, twinkling those keys with your fingers, check out our website, womenofgrace.com. Find out about that wonderful event coming up March 19th at Orchard Lake Schools. I just think it might provide a font of healing for you if today's program has touched you. Until we're